Ready or not, we're live. Okay, so hi everybody, welcome to the Lovecraft eZine annual Halloween show. We do this once a year with myself and Jeffrey Thomas, Jeffrey the American Thomas, and and his brother Scott Thomas. And today we got a new victim to read, Ina Effress. So, how are you, Ina?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on
You're
this
welcome.
special occasion.
Well, I mentioned on the show on Sunday, I went through a list of I don't think an exhaustive list, but a few of your stories, and you're a really great writer. So thanks for being on the show. What's that? Is that a film poster behind you?
Yes, it's an old film poster. My husband is I call him a hoarder, but he's not. I mean, he says it's something different. But before I met him, he used to trade antiques, and his handle on eBay was "son of a junk man." So we have a lot of things, some laying around in different places.
Son of a junk man, huh?
Yeah.
Collector, not
a collector.
A collector.
That's right. Yeah. So Jeff and Scott, hey guys.
Oh,
howdy.
So here we are again so soon.
Yeah. Seems like we just did this.
Yeah.
What's this American I keep hearing about, Jeff?
I'm just an American.
You don't know?
No, that's why I put it in my title here.
No, I know, but tell me about the book.
Oh, okay. On the 30th of this month, I have a novel coming out called The American from Journalstone. And really looking forward to the release of this. It was 10 years from its inception to now. I started in 2010 and I got kind of stuck in it, put it aside, didn't touch it for like 9 years, and then just came back and decided to kind of push around in a scene that had me blocked. And then lo and behold, I got past that thing that had been intimidating me all that time. And I was able to finish the novel and, like I said, sell it to Journalstone. And that's coming out at the end of this month.
You have a lot of nice blurbs for this.
So yes.
Looking forward to reading it. Can people pre-order?
Yes. Yeah. It's at the Journalstone site. And if they pre-order the paperback, like I said, the paperback will officially be released on the 30th, but they can get the ebook free. It comes with the paperback order, and they can get that, download that now. Okay. Or people can just order the digital book now from Journalstone.
Okay.
In advance of the release.
I think I saw a nice review on Publishers Weekly. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, they did a nice review of it.
Scott, how are you, buddy?
I am well.
You all settled into the new house?
Oh yeah, we've been here. Like this is our second or third Halloween here.
Is it? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought, yeah.
Oh no, that's fine. I want to say, yeah.
All right.
But I love it. It's a Queen Anne Victorian with a turret. I look at all the images this time of year of haunted houses, and so many of them have a Victorian turret. And we've got one. It's so cool. And the landlord told us it has 5 windows inside the the interior of our turret. And the landlord said they would lay out the dead in that turret space. So that adds a little.
It's not the ambiance I get in my apartment. Yeah. Well, Sarah, before we went live, she was reminding you that you had some spooky things happen there. So if we have time, we'll talk about that, or you can tell us about that.
Cool. Sure.
All right. Well, everybody's introduced. I'm Mike Davis, Lovecraft eZine, and I think I've done this before, but we always have new viewers, so I'm going to read something really briefly, and then Scott's going to read first, I think, right?
Sure.
Now, this is from a book called The Night Country by Stuart Onan. Really good novel if you haven't read it. And it's got one of the best openings, especially for Halloween lovers and autumn lovers ever. So I will read the first couple of paragraphs, and you guys, you'll see what I mean. And then Scott, you can read. What are you reading?
The Copper Mask.
Right. That's from Midnight in New England, right?
Yes.
Your collection, yeah. One of your collections. All right, here we go. Come, do you hear it? The wind murmuring in the eaves, scouring the bare trees. How it howls, almost musical, a harmony of old moans. The house seems to breathe, an invalid. Leave your scary movie marathon. This is better than TV. Leave the lights out. The blue glow follows you down the hall. Go to the window in the unused room, the cold seeping through the glass. The moon is risen, caught in nodding branches. The image holds you, black trunks backlit. One silver ray fallen across the deck, beckoning. It's a romance, this invitation to lunacy. Elemental yet forbidden, tempting, something remembered in the blood. Don't you ever wonder? Don't you ever want to know? Come then, come with us out into the night. Come now, America the lovesick, America the timid, the blessed, the educated. Come stalk the dark back roads and stand outside the bright houses, calm as murderers in the yard, quiet as deer. Come, you slumberers, you lumps, arise from your legion of sleep and fly over the wild woods. Come, all you dreamers, all you zombies, all you monsters. What are you doing anyway? Paying the bills? Washing the dishes? Waiting for the doorbell? Come on, take your keys, leave the bowl of candy on the porch. Put on the suffocating mask of someone else and breathe. Be someone you don't love so much for once. Listen, like the children, we only have one night. I'll skip a little bit because this is really the whole first paragraph is like this, but I'll just read a little bit more. It'll be fun, trust me, we're not going to get caught. It's a game anyway, a masquerade. This is the suburbs, nothing happens here. So come, friends, strangers, lovers, and neighbors. Come out of your den with your big screen TV, come out of your warm house, and into the cool night. Smell the wet leaves crushed to mush on the driveway, a stale of dust and coriander in the wind. It's the best time of year up here, the only season you want from us, our pastoral past. Witch hunts and wood smoke, the quaintly named dead in mossy churchyards. Never mind that it's all gone, the white picket fences, easy to clean vinyl, the friendship quilt stitched in the Dominican. This is still a New England, garden green, veined with black rivers and massacres. And I think I'll stop there. But if you haven't read this, definitely pick it up. It's more or less a ghost story about some teenagers who were killed in a car crash the previous Halloween. So
Beautiful writing.
Lovely.
yeah, really great writing again, and that's The Night Country by Stuart Onan, and I know it's available on Audible as well, and I'm pretty sure it's available in Kindle for anyone who's interested. So
I like that line, be someone you don't love
Yeah.
so much for once.
yeah, it's put on the suffocating mask of someone else and breathe. Yeah, it's really great writing.
Very evocative writing, yes.
Anyway, it's just a nice, I think, mood setting for the show. So, all right, go ahead, Scott.
So my story is The Copper Mask from my collection Midnight in New England from Down East Books, a publisher in Maine.
That's such a simple cover, but everything you need to know with that cover. Keep holding that up and I'm pinning it to the screen here for everybody. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. The first reading I ever did was from this book. I was going to a Borders. I only expected to be doing a signing, and there's a big poster in the window. And there's a picture of my book, and there was another author too doing a reading too. He had another book from them. His was supposedly true stories, and so we go up to the window, and it's like, oh look, there's a poster with my book, and it goes, oh look, signing and a reading by reading. I've never done a reading in my life. They sprang it on me. Oh my God, I lived.
I'm sure you did fine. You read very well.
It was okay, I guess. But thank you. Okay, should I go?
Sure.
Okay, so The Copper Mask, Massachusetts, 1830. After the cider making, after the killing frost, November was close, crouched in the New England hills like a giant old man made of black twigs. The geese knew, and the moths, and even the crickets had taken away their summer noise. While bright with sun and seemingly innocuous, it was, in fact, the last day of the 10th month. Abigail gave it little thought. Her mind was on bayberries. Goodbye, Mother, the younger Safford said, it being just the two of them since fever had taken her father. The widow Safford waved from the kitchen door, and Abigail was off past the herb beds in her lead-colored dress with a hungry basket swinging, away from the clean white house by the chestnut tree on the road leading out of town. It was the season of bleak fields, and they showed flat amongst the roll of hills, superfluous scarecrows nodding in the air, cool with secret currents. Here under trees in quick shadow, there squinting in light, Abigail walked, humming, past the edges of the fields, her hair loose and windy, more August than October. The trees that had so recently boasted their plumes of color were dissolving, and the sky in turn grew wider by the hour. The fields reposed, dirt wombs for winter wheat, or scrubby with cut maize, nervous with the small birds. Abigail went up hills and down them, stepping between the wagon ruts in the dry October road, humming beneath geese and the crows that called to the strawmen with a language only wind would share. Then came the sweet reek of the dying orchards, the soft browning fruit concealed in triumphant weeds. The buildings of the town were small and toy-like in the distance. The smell of the shops, the clatter of carriages, the voices hidden by the gray-treed hills. Not to say that there was no color. There were stubborn gold, defiant red, and frail and bitter yellow, awaiting the plucking winds and quiet fingers of frost. The young woman knew just where to find the sweet bay, off the path by a meadow near a wood that turned to swamp, hollow with the sound of crows. Abigail waded into the meadow, the dry weeds snatching at her skirt. Birds were in the wood, dark, flurrying shapes that tumbled up as pale leaves tumbled down. The bay bushes were hunched together by the bordering trees. Their dark leaves had the dull shine of leather. Close to them, Abigail knelt and brushed the hair from her face with the back of her wrist. The berries that had eluded the birds hung like small black eggs. They were ripe, and Abigail gathered them to use in candle making. Humming, she reached into the scented shadows of the bush and stole the fragrant fruit. West of the October wood, beyond the swamp and the hills heaped like smoke, the light was receding. Shadows in the wood made the trees seem to multiply, and a deer, or something large enough to snap twigs, stirred there. Abigail moved to the next bush, moved to a new tune to hum. Her basket grew heavy, its bounty glinting softly. The smell of leaves was on her hands, and the wind flicked hair at her eyes. Sticks snapped in the wood where a tree shaped a jail for the light. Abigail leaned to one side to look. A shadow in the shadows, upright, limbs. She stood and stared, but the thing had slipped away. Hello! Again, in the maze of trees, a figure ducked in and out of sight. It was small, dressed darkly. Abigail heard the leaves crisp and rustle beneath its quick steps. The breeze toyed with her hair, and she reached to restrain the betraying strands. Hello! The woman took up her basket and pushed past the bay bushes into the near woods after the boy. It was a boy after all. She had seen his legs, swift in the brittle bracken, the pale hands, his best little Sunday suit. The glimpse had not revealed his head. "Wait," Abigail called. "Don't be frightened." The boy thumped away like a rabbit, threading through the bare and near-bare trees, rattling the reluctant colors. Abigail, awkward in her skirt and trying not to dump her berries, fell behind. "Wait, won't you?" Every step rasped where the maples had bled, and squat pines like green shadows obstructed the peripheral child. Sometimes Abigail could see his arms waving, his hands plucking leaves as he went. Other times it was his back, and once, where bone-colored birches stood thin in the gloom, she spied his whole body, and in that compromised afternoon light, there was no head. The sky was widening beyond the trees, a wistful blue. The small dark shape of the boy burst out of the wood into the air, and Abigail lost sight of him. Breathing hard, she slowed, stepped over roots and crippled boughs. Good Massachusetts hills rode beyond a field, and the wood fell behind. Pumpkins hugged the ground in the dimming light like strange orange turtles half tucked under wide leaves. Abigail did not see the boy. Perhaps he was lying among the crops, close to the cool earth. She stepped carefully through the fragile vines, peering down. "Hello!" Her voice went out across the field to the hulking ghost hills, gray like ash, red where maples still burned. There was no sign of the boy. Abigail moved on, deeper into the pumpkin patch, her 2 feet crunching as she stepped around the many-sized globes. Near the middle of the field, she found a number of dead crows neatly folded about themselves, there in the withering leaves. They were dark against the yellowed grass, shimmering softly as if damp in faltering light. Abigail was about to stoop for a closer look, but a sharp glint of light caught her eye. Like a crow herself, Abigail was drawn to the spark, and upon inspection saw something metal tucked close to the pumpkins and crows. She bent and lifted the copper mask. How it gleamed. A simple, elegant face comprised of metal leaves, cool and light in the hand. It stared back impassively, the eyes cut out. How could she not put it on? Forgetting all about the boy, Abigail placed the mask over her face, and it held there as if pushed by wind. She shot up and her hair flung out like a scream. She saw the world through the October mask, the falling light, the decaying fields, the crows, the round hills where November perched in its cold black bones. Acorns, rose hips, gourds, and winter squash, ash, sycamore, oak, and silver maple. The road led through the last day of the 10th month. The light was wary and, like the mask, coppery as it knelt upon the fields. Abigail walked as if sleeping, her basket of berries swaying gently. She passed 2 men harvesting turnips, their cart heaped and smelling of earth. Gazing through the mask, Abigail saw the first, pale as a swan, his eyes dead in deep smudges. The other, oblivious about his task, appeared charred where his flesh showed. A small clay pipe was clenched in his teeth, his lips burnt away. It was the same in town, where Abigail walked in her copper guise. Death, beneath the mask of flesh, was hers in all its future faces. Unconcealed, the townsfolk showed her those faces, this one shriveled in age, that one gashed in mishap, others bloated, blue, pocked, wasted with disease. It was the same with the houses, lonely and dim in the dark, dusk-draped town. The sun was lost, down through the trees like a big brass kettle glinting its last. The twilight breeze mocked the ocean in the leaves. The moon was on the sky like breath on glass. One house after the other showed Abigail its sorry face. Up from the weeds, a peaked behemoth of moldering gingerbread stood, its paint in the moonlight like the scales of crumbling fish. Wind sounded in the vacant stairwells behind the hollow windows with nothing in their darkness but strange eyes like dislocated stars. Down the street, house after house. Dolls with crabapple eyes and a house filled with dark water hovered like slow pale fish in the windows. The sinuous foliage of a willow waved from the chimney like tentacles of smoke. Her own house crumbling gray beneath a chestnut. Abigail kicked her way up the leafy path to the door. Inside and quiet as could be, she peered into the kitchen. She was thankful that her mother's back was to her, afraid to see what was on the other side of the chrome-colored hair. Her mother was singing quietly, the words strained and muffled, as if fumbling through a broken mouth. Up the drafty stairs, past walls dripping spiders, Abigail sought her bedchamber. The frosty light of the moon was on the window. A mirror hung above her chest of clothes, and she stood in front of it, her full skirt rustling as if there were only leaves beneath. The copper mask was dim in the glass, and it was likely the improbable light that made Abigail imagine the mouth of the mask opening, a beak, and maybe the dark head of a bird poking briefly from between her teeth. The mask that had seemed so light now ached against her features, and Abigail lay on her dusty bed beneath the great copper weight. November seemed gray and brown, its light weak as if shone through milk. Widow Safford stirred over breakfast, the scents warm in the clean, tidy kitchen. Ferns of frost were on the window glass, a kettle on the stove. Abigail, her mother called. Her daughter must not have felt well. Hadn't she gone up to her sleep early the night before? Abigail, breakfast. Her calls went up the stairs without reply. Widow Safford sighed and went up herself. She rapped softly at the door and called through the wood, Abigail? When she opened the door, Abigail's mother saw the room was dark but for chill November light falling on the bed, where damp dead crows made the shape of a body, its face a copper mask.
Let that be a lesson to you. Do not put on the mask.
Gorgeous writing.
That's a great story, Scott.
Very
That was
poetic.
really good. I love your writing. It's so like tactile. Like I could feel all of the leaves and the dry crumbling fish scales. Very rich.
Thank you.
Walls dripping with
Thank
spiders too.
Thank you, Paul.
Beautifully written.
Yeah, so Sarah would like you to do. He wanted you to do your reading first, since your wife Sarah Scott, since she's a big fan of yours. So she could listen to you and go to bed on time.
Oh, my stepdaughter Bridget, she has school tomorrow, so.
Oh, her too. Okay.
Yeah, Sarah's gonna stay up.
Sarah's okay. All right, Bridget.
Yes.
So, all right. So Sarah mentioned that you guys have had some spooky things happening there. Maybe you could take a few minutes to talk about that. But first, we'll flip over to Ina here and let her do a reading. Ina, for those out there who don't know you yet, can you maybe introduce yourself? You've got at least 6 or 7 stories out there in various anthologies and magazines. One of them is Spirits Unwrapped, edited by Daniel Brom. Your story's Birthright in there, right?
Yeah, Birthright's in there. That came out last year. Daniel did a great job editing that. There's some fantastic stories in there. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
I also have one out now that I'm not reading now because I'm reading it Friday, in Weird Horror, which is making a splash. And again, some just really good writers in there.
Yeah, that's from Undertow Press.
From Undertow in Canada. And Michael Kelly is just a great editor. And then the one I'm going to read now is from Tartarus Press, and they're in the UK. The book, it's their 30th anniversary anthology. And I think they come out with Strange Tales anthology every year, but this one is the anniversary issue. And really excited to be a part of that with these such talented people.
Thanks for
So
being
well
here.
respected publisher. So that's
They're,
quite a coup.
Yeah, Tartarus has been around that long. Wow.
and they're so nice, and everything they put out is so elegant. So that's a real honor for me.
Congratulations on that.
Thank
Thought
you.
I'd say real quick, Happy Halloween, everybody, because I haven't said that
Happy
yet.
Halloween.
At least I don't think I have. But
Halloween.
so I appreciate everybody who's watching now and later. Appreciate everybody who's watching live. I wanted to point out we got Mark watching live in the dead of night from, I believe he said Northeast England. It's past 2 a.m. there. And then Kat just woke up. It's a little bit past 3 a.m. in Berlin, I believe. Kat Pulver,
Wow.
Joe's wife. So,
mhm.
and Kat says, "My love to the Thomas brothers. Hello to the lovely lady as well." So,
Mhm.
Hello.
Hi, Kat.
okay, so yeah, go for it. And what's the title of this one that you're gonna read?
It's called Nervous System. It was past 5 and the briefing was already underway. The wait staff, dressed in black, huddled for a rundown of important guests and changes to the menu. As she edged her way in from the outskirts of the circle, she heard JP spouting his usual, "And remember, our taste is affected by our environment." The older staff ignored Vera, but others were more hostile. JP's moue of distaste stretched on his lips like a lazy cat. She imagined dumping boiling water over his hairless scalp. "Ah, Miss Thomas, how noble of you to join us." Thomas. 4 years, and it was still a relief to hear those 2 bland syllables. On her 18th birthday, she'd legally changed her name. "Sorry," she said, and clasped her hands, head hung for a humble effect. Her employment was still on probation. "As I was saying," he continued, "everything in here is part of a story. Your job is to be consistent." A high-powered jet rained on her as the angry dishwasher attacked a pot. Communication was by eyebrow or nod. Any talking was low and urgent. "Live octopus," JP was saying, "is an authentic Korean delicacy. We're lucky enough to serve this as our special tonight. But it is not for the faint-hearted. Pay close attention to my demonstration." The waitstaff watched, while a team from the kitchen, their white aprons splattered with sauce and blood, delivered a pot filled with bubbling red broth. It was heaped with seafood, like a child's collection from a tide pool. A flame burned blue underneath. On top of the mound of cherry stone and razor clams, shrimp, crabs, mussels, abalone, and sea snails, JP dropped a squirming octopus, gray, slimy, its head the size of a fist, with Medusa-like tentacles writhing in every direction. Steam sizzled up from the food. Stunned, the creature wriggled and crawled all over the scorching pile, searching in vain for an exit. "We want our guests to have the ultimate experience," JP said with a proud lift of his chin. "The trick is to let the octopus dance on the hot plate for a while. Its dance is part of the entertainment. If you've ever seen a barefoot performer on hot coals, you know what I'm talking about. After the heat begins to overtake it and its movement begins to die down, then we cut the tentacles for eating, like so." JP snapped his fingers. In high speed, the sous chef snipped the slithering tentacles. He scattered them on a plate of whole garlic cloves and jalapeno peppers. Cephalopod parts continued to worm around the plate. Their powerful suctions latched onto the cloves and flipped the peppers. "The nervous system of the octopus is a wondrous thing," boasted JP. "It is evenly distributed along its body, not just in its brain. Even when severed, these pieces are still alive. They're autonomous. In a way, they have a mind of their own. Some say the octopus is conscious that it's about to be eaten. He jabbed a finger in the direction of one of the more seasoned waiters and beckoned him to stand beside the twitching food. The silver-haired man took the chopsticks. JP nodded. In slow motion, the man raised a tentacle to his mouth, eyes clenched, as he pulled back his lips, touched his front teeth to the slippery skin, and froze. Well, JP pointed to his watch, we don't have all day. The man clamped his mouth around the tentacle. The tapered end of it hung, flopping on his chin, as if he'd swallowed the head of a mutant tadpole. There was a chorus of groans. Vera gagged. She thought about the last time someone had challenged her to eat the worm at the bottom of the mezcal bottle. She'd been trying to impress some boy. She gulped it down, hands on hips, with false bravado. Later, she learned that it was not a worm, but a moth larva. The waiter kissed the tentacle harder and made a sucking noise until the tip slipped into his puckered lips and out of sight. Listen up, JP clapped twice. It is very important that you instruct your guests to chew properly. As a defense mechanism, the tentacles will often use their suction pads to latch onto your throat and choke you to death. The waiter opened his eyes. His jaw muscles twitched. If you can get past the fear, a sesame oil-inflected octopus is sweet and rewarding, JP said. That night, as usual, Vera had the less desirable tables in the back, by the aquarium wall, emitting a lonely light of blue. That section was called Siberia. When she approached her first guest, an older couple, the wife immediately showed her displeasure. We asked to be seated by the window. That's our spot. She spoke guardedly, the way a privileged woman clutches her purse in a bad neighborhood. Vera gave a cursory glance to the front of the restaurant. All the tables were reserved. My apologies, those seats have been spoken for. But we know the owner, said the woman, swiveling her wrist at chin level like some kind of royalty. We're neighbors. Her jowls drooped like the arms of an old candelabra. That one got the face she deserves, said an acerbic voice in Vera's mind. It belonged to her mother, whose wisdom popped in regularly, uninvited. Silently, Vera swatted at the intrusion. Friday nights are very popular. I'd be happy to bring over the general manager if you wish. The couple ended up shortchanging her on the tip. Later, she caught a four-top smuggling in a bottle of wine. She drilled the wine list to memory, and this label was unfamiliar, a 2013 Bordeaux. A gang of divorcees occupied the table, their garish manicures catching the candlelight. The manager has asked me to inform you that we will have to add the corkage fee to your bill. It's mentioned on our menu. We weren't aware, said the brunette with the brittle cheekbones. How much is the corkage fee? Vera opened the menu and pointed to the bottom. 150, madam. 150, the women exchanged glances. That's highway robbery. Oh, come on, said the one with the caved-in septum. Can't you give us girls a break? There's a nice reward in it for you. Then she leaned forward, causing her implants to loom even larger, and stage whispered, It'll be our secret. Unfortunately, I have to adhere to policy, madam. The stingy always pay twice. Her mother's scorn played in spooky clairaudience, as though channeled by a medium. And it was near the middle of her shift when she got her first group of diners wanting to try the special. 6 men, ties askew, skin glinting. They didn't look much older than her. Hunched over their food, the men devoured fried oysters in squid ink crust. She poured the last drop of wine. Would you like another bottle? Hey, gorgeous, how about a drink when you get off work? The ringleader said. We'll show you a real good time, promise. He meant to put a hand on his heart, but it landed on the wrong side. His cuff was rolled and rumpled. His black arm hair had obviously been trimmed. Your main course will be served shortly. Her smile was practiced. When their food arrived, the six turned their attention from Vera to the octopus. Its gelatinous webbing shimmered over shells. An octopus cannot scream. A still moving lobster claw clamped down. Silence at the table. Then all at once their slick mouths began to laugh, a little too loudly, the way people do when they want to prove nothing's wrong. Come to Papa, the short one clacked chopsticks at the hapless creature. Vera had never been so happy for a break. She walked to the alley and back and, pulling on her vaporizer, watched a dumpster churn with rats. In the sweltering heat, her uniform clung to her, weighing her down. Where the alley wall ended and the vacant lot began, there was a rubble hole from a demolished building. The kitchen boy came out to heap another shiny bag of $80 a plate Asian fusion leftovers on top of the other mounds of waste, flown in fresh that day, and the slap scared the rats out of the dumpster, screaming and hissing, the dominant ones nearly trampling the others. When they reached the wall, they went from seething horde to single file formation until the point where the wall abruptly ended, and then they sprayed out into the lot and became shadowy blurs as they climbed the debris to disappear. This was Vera's fifth city in 2 years. South Beach, Chicago, LA, London. The further away from home she went, the more she discovered a past part of herself that she thought she could outrun and discard, nameless, like a baby on a doorstep. It disoriented her, as if she'd put the car in drive but was plagued by an oddity in the rearview mirror that came into focus even as she floored the gas. Now here she stood, brooding in the shadow of the Brooklyn Bridge, in Theater Alley, at one time the service lane for carriages bringing theater goers to Park Theater, now long defunct. It had been the city's first one-way street. Red lightning branched from her irises. Her pale skin verged on jellyfish translucence. All week long, she'd work 11-hour shifts. Vera unscrewed the vaporizer's capsule and stuffed it into the front pockets of her pants. Her fingertips struck a hard ball the size of a pea. She examined it in the flat of her palm, another of her mother's coral beads, to ward off evil. Early that morning, she'd seen her parents off. Their goodbyes were always identical. On the curb, suitcase ready, her father patted her stiffly, his hands doctorly and cruel. Vera focused on his shoes the way she did as a child. Her mother pulled out some greasy food wrapped in foil. Her hair was shorn and sexless, her glasses so thick that her soft eyes became the eyes of a mole. A rare beauty buried and a body thrown away. A good man likes some meat on the bones, she said in broken English, crinkling the food into Vera. And the instant their cab pulled away, her pre-migraine aura had appeared. Grinding her teeth, Vera lobbed the coral bead in the dumpster and heard it ping. So much for protection, she thought. She entered the kitchen through the dank passageway, and the wall of heat lashed at her face, her neck, and hands. A clanging of sauces, stalks, and cuts of carcass. Chicken feet bubbled in a vat. Searing flames as long as dragon necks leaped from the cook's hands. 3 stoves blazed at 500 degrees, clinging to a refrigerated closet, that week's New York Times restaurant review. If a gypsy tricks you, her mother's howl gusted from every direction, turn a cup upside down overnight. Only this will lift the curse. Vera stepped back inside. Something was wrong. She knew this because the host had abandoned his stand. Tables were deserted, napkins scattered under chairs, artful presentations untouched. A crowd had gathered in back in her section, phones held high, a sea of rectangles glowing in the ambient lighting, craning to get a clear recording for posting to social media. The hairy armed man was on his back, flopping like cattle hung by their hooves on the killing floor conveyor. His eyes popped, his fingers clawed at his neck, his pelvis thrashed. From above, the aquarium projected a full-body halo of neon blue. Meanwhile, the octopus was still dancing, if a bit ungracefully, as it was missing some of its tentacles. One of its arms continued functioning over the garlic cloves, its neurons firing independently of any input by the brain, which was being cooked alive, along with its other distant cousins from the sea. Vera had neglected to instruct them to chew. Unnoticed, she backed away and slunk through the kitchen and out to the alley, where she faced the rear of the Park Road building, its lower window openings shuttered in metal, and she wondered whether she should head towards Fulton Street Station or if her best bet at this hour was north, under the bronze candelabras of City Hall Park, through its alluring black shadows, and to the mouth of the bridge. She chose north. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, this is the story. First story I read of Ina's, and this is the story that I'm trying to keep it family friendly tonight, without the usual Sunday swearing on the show. But I'm reading it and I go, what the you know, just yeah.
Excellent.
In a good way. It's just a horrifying. It builds, and it's a horrifying story. And you feel this for this creature that they're making dance for entertainment. They're torturing it basically for entertainment. So, I don't want to be. Mark says that was horrible in a good way. And by the way, I think you probably know that Anya's watching too, Ina. So
yeah, I'm so glad she's on.
Yeah.
Very well written.
Yeah.
Very well.
Excellent writing. My word.
Yeah, I don't want to ask something so obvious as where'd you get the idea for this story? But I'd like to. How did this come about?
It originally it was much longer than this, and I realized that it was actually two different stories, and the part I took out was all about family. But the octopus and the nervous system is one, it's just kind of how I write, all in metaphors, for better or worse. I mean,
I was going to say the story strikes me as being metaphorical for what's going on with the character.
Definitely. And it was just about, even after you sever and separate from your family, one part of this was, you can't really ever separate from that central nervous system.
Sure. The way you had said she had worked in this city and that city and London and so forth, like spread out like tentacles, but always coming back to that central part. Yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that you left, that there was more to it. I didn't know that till now, that you decided to, if I understand you right, either put in another story or just take out of this one. Because I said to you that the vagueness, just knowing, before I said to you the vagueness of the character's past, but just knowing it was not a good past, I thought added to the story. So yeah, good editing decision. It's hard to cut things that you write too. So
much harder. Yeah, when I try to edit, I just end up putting more in. It's very hard to cut stuff. It takes a lot of discipline.
It does.
Yeah. So this is the cephaloid version of the past is always with us. So yeah. Anyway, you're a really good writer. How long have you been writing? And how long have you been? Are you recently published the stories that you sent me, like in the last couple of years, or?
Yeah, like 2017, 2018. I got a couple in there. But it's not easy to get published, as you know, probably.
Yeah.
Easy to self-publish, but it's not it's not nearly as rewarding because basically anybody can self-publish. But to get into an anthology like these anthologies that you're appearing in, that's a real accomplishment, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been at it on both sides, mostly the editorial side, and when you have open call submissions where anyone can submit, you haven't read their work before, you do get a lot of it. Basically, you find diamonds in the rough, I guess is the best way to put it. But you have to go through a lot of rough to get to those diamonds. So, so yeah, when you're published in something like Spirits Unwrapped or The Weird or wherever, then that's that publisher and that editor basically saying this is a quality story, and it's more than just you. I mean, Andy Weir self-published The Martian, and it's a damn good book. Made it into a damn good movie, but there's a lot of self-published stuff that's not very good.
Yeah, that's the exception to the rule, I think, basically, usually.
Yeah. So, we'll continue to ignore Jeff Thomas. Oh,
sure. Story of my life.
But when she said, I almost laughed out loud. I had to stop myself from butting in and making fun of you guys when she talked about she changed
Thomas,
her name to Thomas.
Those two syllables, yeah. I know, hey,
that is great.
Resemble that remark.
I didn't even put the two together.
I didn't put the two together when I read it, but just now when you read it, I did. Oh, I finally found it. I was thinking of the Penny Dreadful quote. Did you guys all watch that show, Penny Dreadful?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh wow, you guys especially would love it. I know. I'm not talking about the recent one, although that was good too. But Penny Dreadful is set in the late 1800s in London. So, have you seen any of it, Ina?
No.
Okay. Well, I definitely know you two guys, Thomas Brothers, well enough to know that you like it. So you check it out. I don't remember if it's on Netflix or what, but it's somewhere easy to watch. But luckily there's this Google thing you can do that. But there's a quote where one character asks another, "Do you believe the past can return?" And he says, "More than that, it never leaves us." And she says, "Never." And he says, "It is who we are." So, when you talk about the metaphorical aspect of that story, Jeff, of Ina's story with her, I thought of this quote. So, too many good books, too many good shows, not enough time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Pressing something.
Yeah. Why don't we do this? Because Bridget has to go to bed soon, right, Scott?
She's probably gone to bed.
Oh, she's probably gone to bed. So I can move on to your brother.
I can hear my daughter sneaking around the background. She knows she can get away with anything because I'm not.
She's going to be a TV star. She's always like, wanting to be on camera in these things, which I don't mind at all. Yeah, we're going to cap it at 2 hours, so we still have some time. Before I go on to Jeff, Ina, do you have anything else you want to read later, or sometimes these guys will tell true life paranormal stories that have happened to them, and apparently Scott has some recent ones with the newer house. So,
I'd love to listen to those.
Okay, well, please pipe in too. If you got anything else to add.
Okay.
Jeff, what are you going to read?
I'm going to read a story from a collection of mine. It was from 2003?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff, to interrupt you. One last thing, Ina. Mark said in the side chat that he's becoming a vegan now after listening to your story, and Kat said, no more seafood ever again.
It's a compelling reason.
All right,
I feel guilty. I've eaten octopus.
I have too.
I felt guilty.
I haven't, because I feel like
Uh-huh.
they're just isn't. I'm not condemning you guys, but the more I learn about them, the more I understand that they're,
Mm.
you know, most likely self-aware and as intelligent as us, just in a different way. You know.
It's on the other hand, I feel that way sometimes too. But on the other hand, I readily eat pork, and pigs like what, the seventh or ninth most intelligent animal, and
That's a good
so
point. Well, you know, I guess humans, we were
I remember I was
evolved to eat meat.
walking. One time I was walking down the street in Vietnam, and a guy was standing out in the street playing with something. I stopped and looked. He had a little baby octopus. It was in a cup or something. He was playing with it. And I asked him if I could touch it or play with it. And it was tiny, but it was wrapping its tentacles around my finger and trying to get the suction cups off.
Oh, yeah.
From just even a tiny one. They really get a good grip. So I can imagine a bigger one swallowing one of those tentacles. I could easily imagine it being a problem.
Yeah. It's a classic case of the assholes got what was coming to them.
What he deserved.
In a story.
If anybody has time to watch on Netflix, I just saw this a few weeks ago. It just came out. My Octopus Teacher is
it looks so good.
fantastic.
I show my T-shirt, by the way, while we're talking about.
Oh.
God, what are the odds?
Yeah.
You did watch it? Because I saved it in my favorites. I haven't gotten to it yet.
It's really interesting.
Wow. The trailer is just blew me away.
And they developed a relationship.
Yeah.
A real friendship. And that octopus is brilliant.
Yeah, in case you didn't catch what Ina said, folks, it's called My Octopus Friend. Do I have that right? And it's on Netflix.
Oh, I heard her interview on NPR.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. So anyway, again, everybody, happy Halloween. And Jeff, I'm sorry that I interrupted you. You're reading what again?
That's fine. It's a short story from a collection of mine from some years back called 13 Specimens.
Right.
And my story is called October 32nd. Just got to find it in here.
I don't know if I can suspend my belief on that title.
There's no point in me going on. Okay, so October 32nd. It's pretty short. I drove home from my second shift job at 11:30 p.m. during the most depressing part of Halloween night. This was when the magic drained out of the streets like smoke wisping from a blown-out jack-o'-lantern. This was when the orange of October threatened to char overnight to the gray-brown of November. With a decisive creak, the earth turned on its axis from autumn toward winter. Yes, the magic was still out there, like a storm front on a weatherman's map, but it was migrating south toward Mexico, where tomorrow they would have their Day of the Dead. So the gate between the living and the dead was still open, just shifting like the moon from one sky to another. The two realms were still in communion, overlapping. Our reality and another, the material and the spiritual, yin and yang. But in the wet streets my car sloshed through, there was no more festivity. In fact, I had missed it altogether, having gone to the pharmaceutical company where I punched in every day at 3 p.m. But I remembered the holiday clearly, fondly, from my childhood, and I knew what had been lost as the hour trudged, like a trick-or-treater through piles of leaves, toward midnight. It was now just 5 minutes away, according to my wristwatch, with its numbers and hands glowing a faint fungal green. At least I had had a tease of the magic on my way to work. There must have been a Halloween party at the Brown School. As I passed the old brick Wright Plastics building, where I used to work as an injection molder, I saw 4 children in Halloween costumes waiting to cross the street. They had their backpacks on and had either taken their masks off entirely or wore them pushed up on top of their heads. But at least I saw the wind-blown cape of a vampire, their bodies under their winter coats, shiny orange, satiny purple, glittering green. Even the elderly crossing guard, whom I saw there every afternoon on my way to work, seemed to be in the spirit, wearing a bright orange jacket, though actually he wore that every day, no matter the season. I had slowed and stopped at the old crossing guard shuffled out into the street, glaring pugilistically at me, as though daring me to try to dart through the white lines that barred my way before his charges were safely conveyed through them, as if filing along a narrow bridge that spanned a yawning chasm of black asphalt. But I waited patiently, as always, as he held up his stop sign, like a king brandishing his scepter, and ushered the children across, like spirits being invited into our world from their own. I wished I was one of them. But now, there were no more trick-or-treaters walking these sidewalks I passed alongside. Leaves that had either earlier been piled crisp in the gutters, fluttering about in the brisk breeze like locusts, were now soggy, matted into something close to a slime. Thank God for the children, the rain had held off until late in the evening, but now it was falling in torrents that pounded my windshield and made it hard for my wipers to brush aside. A scarecrow sitting in a lawn chair in someone's front yard was saturated by the rain, slumped to one side like a dead man in an electric chair. Sometimes, I knew from my own childhood experience, adults dressed as scarecrows and sat still in the yards until unwary kids drew near, and then it would stand or lunge to startle them. This one, however, was most certainly an actual scarecrow, unless the masquerader were asleep or dead. The air was so wet, it was as though my car drove along the bottom of a dark sea. Even the inside of my car was damp, as if it accumulated and bottled the evaporating moisture from every drying out, shriveling, rotting jack-o'-lantern in the town. I saw these pumpkins dimly on doorsteps. Their eyes would be imperceptibly but steadily squinting, more narrow, their fanged smiles sucking in toothlessly. Where strings of orange lights had glowed from shrubs, there was bristling blackness. Where windows had glowed with plastic pumpkins and candles, there was gaping blankness. Spooky audio tapes no longer played ghostly wails, howling wolves, crashing thunder. It seemed, in fact, that I was the only person alive in these streets. I did see another car as I drew nearer to the center of town, however. But rather than being someone coming home from work, I suspected they were coming home from a Halloween party at which they'd imbibed too many festive fluids, because a small white car was driving backwards through a crosswise street that intersected with the one I was on. I decelerated, thinking that the vehicle was reversing carelessly so as to turn into my street, perhaps having overshot the intersection. But as I crawled closer, I saw no sign of the careless driver down that side road, and I continued on my way. I tried to raise myself from my depression at having missed Halloween by considering that there might still be some horror movies playing on cable. I glanced at my dashboard clock, noted that it was 10 to midnight. Sure, I thought, a couple had to be playing still. I'd make some microwave popcorn, settle into my couch with all the lights out except for my flickering hearth of cathode blue. Ahead now, I could make out the top of the old brick Crone Plastics building where I used to be a maintenance worker. The nearby grade school would be silent and shut at this hour, but I saw that the elderly crossing guard had stayed out late or had arrived early for his next shift. He was hard not to notice in his orange jacket that shone in my headlights. Without children to watch over, he did not glare at me challengingly, did not even look at me as I passed him, just stood there with the stop sign hanging at his side, the rain exploding off his shoulders and his gray hair plastered to his skull. I had noticed only moments ago that my gas was running low, though I could have sworn I'd filled the tank only that afternoon. Maybe I had a leak. In any case, I pulled into the gas station just beyond the Crone factory, but no one came out from inside at the sound of the bell, the interior all dark except for illuminated signs advertising motor oil and the like. I'd have to take care of it tomorrow. I pulled back onto the road to continue on toward home. The detritus of the holiday was still sadly in evidence around me. On someone's front lawn, a soggy scarecrow had fallen out of a lawn chair to lie on its face like a drowned man. How clever, I thought, if it were really an adult in costume, diligently waiting for a last trick-or-treater to come along, or a car like mine, so as to leap suddenly to his feet and give me a start. I watched it out of the corner of my eye as I splashed by in the flume of the street, but the sodden mannequin did not so much as raise its head. The rain had stopped, and the streets of town were now filled with a damp fog so thick one would think it had blown in off of Lake Pometacomet, though that was too far from the town center to be the case. Streetlights glowed as if buried in mountains of cotton, Though there were no mock candles or garlands of orange bulbs to restore to the town the costume of fantasy it had worn while I'd been spending 8 tedious hours in the printing company I worked for. I slowed as I neared a street that crossed mine because I could see a vehicle passing along it. But as the vehicle, a dark green van, cut across, I realized it was moving backwards. What a stupid, probably drunken stunt to pull. Probably teenagers. It was a good thing no kids were still in the streets trick-or-treating. As it came up on the crosswise street, I looked down its dark length and saw the headlights receding into the distance until swallowed in the thick, boiling mists. The fog was slowing my progress. I looked at the softly glowing blue face of my digital watch and saw that it was 1:45. I hoped I'd get home in time to catch at least the end of a horror movie, preferably some older classic. I had some Jiffy Pop I could cook right on the burner of my stove like my father had made for me as a child. Through the rolling plumes of fog, I began to make out the body of the old Driscoll's plastic building where I'd once been a customer service rep, its bricks glistening like dragon scales in the streetlights. Where the crosswalk cut across the black of the road, I saw the elderly crossing guard waiting patiently for the children that would be walking to the black school after dawn had risen. He sat in a lawn chair, like a king on his throne, holding a scepter of a stop sign across his knees, but he only looked at me calmly, expressionlessly, as I drove past him. I considered waving, but decided that he might think I was being facetious. I sighed morosely as I rode on through the night, feeling like a paleontologist who had come too late to the sighting of a live dinosaur, finding only its feces instead. Much as I tried to console myself with the promise of TV and popcorn, I knew the true magic had dissipated. I was in that limbo between night and midnight, which was technically the start of day. That purgatory between Halloween and Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, none of which meant quite as much to me. I felt cheated, even resentful. Every day was so bland, so redundant, a never-ending loop of punching in, punching out, waking up, turning in, dressing, undressing, driving to my job at the electronics company, then driving home. On the one night of the year when the walls seemed to come down, the rules melted away, when reality became skewed, I had missed it all, a prisoner chained in the dungeons of the mundane. At least my favorite gas station was open tonight, I noticed as I drove past, first glancing at my gauge to make sure my tank was full. The interior was lit, though I couldn't see much of the counterman from my angle, just a bit of his shoulder and one arm. Still, it made me feel a little less alone tonight. On I went, bitter that I had to go to work the next day, as if nothing special had ever happened, but at least grateful that my second shift hours permitted me to stay up late watching TV. It was a faint solace that I clung to as I drove by the dark houses with their dark windows, dark pumpkins, that house with a mound of leaves and empty, strewn clothing in its front yard, the guts and flayed skin of a dismantled scarecrow. It was a good thing that I stopped at an intersection close to the town center. A motorcycle roared through without even hesitating at the stop sign. It wasn't until it had plunged into fog that swirled in its wake, however, that I had the impression that not only had there been no rider on it, but that it had been racing backwards. I must have been tired, but I was determined not to go straight to bed when I got home and thus admit defeat utterly. I glanced at my dashboard clock. It was 20 minutes till midnight, and I was going to milk the tail end of Halloween for all it was worth. Though I had no popcorn at home, I could still plunk myself down and nibble on chips or stale donuts as I caught the last horror movies of the night. As I drew steadily closer to home, by habit, I slowed my speed when I came up on the old Brick Howland Plastics factory where I had once been a machine adjuster. The crosswalk was empty, of course, the Red School many hours away from unlocking its doors. The elderly crossing guard had probably been the one to leave that lawn chair on the sidewalk. Yes, I saw his paddle-like stop sign resting on it. But I was sure right now he was snuggled in his bed or perhaps watching those late-night horror flicks himself. Peripherally, I noticed something as I rode across the twin white stripes, and I glanced up into my rearview mirror. At the opposite side of the street, as if waiting to cross, there had been a small figure in a shaggy dark costume. A child dressed as a gorilla or a werewolf? But out so late? Could it be a trick-or-treater who'd become lost in the maze of the town, still trying to find his way home? The mist that billowed in my wake quickly occluded the vision, and I decided my first impression was unlikely. I must have projected my imagination onto a shrub or a fire hydrant. Still, I decided that maybe I should turn around to investigate. Besides, a peek at my gas gauge reminded me that I was running low. My favorite gas station was ahead, and the lights were on inside its little convenience store. I pulled up to one of the pumps and cut my engine. Even as I lowered my window, there was already a man standing so close to my door that I couldn't see his face. I asked him to fill me up, and without a word, he shuffled around to the back of my car, where I heard him fumbling to open the cover, fumbling in the spout. Funny that it took less time to fill my tank than I would have thought. Maybe my gauge was faulty. The counter on the pump read just $5, so I dug it from my wallet and held it out the window like a candy bar for a trick-or-treater. I saw the attendant in his reflective orange jacket moving toward me to retrieve the bill. Though I couldn't see his face from this angle, something strange hung down the front of his body. It looked like the skin hide of a dog. I leaned forward a little and tilted my head to look up at the man as he planted himself directly outside my door again. The elderly man in the orange jacket had the end of that flayed hide in his mouth, as if he were sucking it in slowly. But it wasn't a skinned animal hide, I realized as I saw it up close. It was a shaggy werewolf costume with no child inside any longer. I handed the man his bill and rolled up my window as quickly as I could. I didn't like the glaring, challenging look in his eyes as he sucked in another inch of the costume. I didn't dare turn around at the gas station after all. I pulled my car back out onto the street to continue on toward home. It was only 11:30 after all, and I might still catch the end of a horror movie on cable if I hurried. I refused to let go of the night's magic. I was determined to have my share.
That's great.
October 32nd.
Cool.
And that is in which collection again, for those who...
It's in a collection called 13 Specimens.
And that's available on Kindle as well.
Yeah, it actually was originally published by Delirium Books and it went out of print. And so it being out of print, I wanted to keep it in print. So I re-released it myself. But it is available in...
fair enough. You did the right thing. I mean...
I do that now whenever any of my books go out of print, just to keep them in print,
Yeah.
I've done it with quite a few as the rights revert to me.
Willie's been doing that too. Willie Meikle with older.
I talked to him about what he was doing, and I kind of used his method as a blueprint in releasing some of my previously published work.
There's a man, William Meikle, who's a great writer. He's never had an agent. Will probably never be, in Rolling Stone or anything, but he's got a huge fan base. This is what he does for a living, and he's been doing it for a living for quite a while. So,
yeah, he's successful at it.
Yeah, so there's for all you writers out there, this is off the Halloween topic just a bit, but there's more than one path. Just find your path, whatever it is, and don't compare yourself to anybody else, whether you're a writer or whatever you are. So, yeah, great story.
Yeah.
Refusing to let go of the
great
magic.
writing. Excellent writing.
Yeah, Jeffrey, you have a lot of books and stories out, right?
Yeah, I do.
You write at like a story like that. How long does it take you to write?
I don't even remember. The thing is that I used to write very quickly and in almost in a sloppy kind of way. Back in the small press, the zines, the days of the zines,
The 90s.
I used to, in the late 80s, early 90s, I used to be able to write a story in one day, print it out, put it in an envelope, and send it. I wouldn't proofread it. I wouldn't even proofread it. And unfortunately, a lot of these things got published. So my early work.
It was fortunately then. Now it's unfortunately in your mind, right?
Now, as time has gone on, I've become more and more careful as a writer, where I agonize over the choice of words, and I when I sit down to write again, I reread what I've written before, and just tweaking and polishing, and okay, leave it alone today before I send it out. Leave it alone. Come back to it tomorrow. Read it one more time, and so the process is much slower for me now. And consequently, this year I've only written about maybe 4 short stories this year, and that's about it. It's a much slower process for me now. But
plus, it's 2020.
yeah, but even still, this has been a
good
gradual
point.
process, anyways. You know,
I know.
I'm much less prolific than I once was.
Ina, do you?
Yes.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'm just going to ask. Do you have any true life paranormal things that have happened to you?
You know, I've been trying to think.
And if not,
I
I've got
don't
another question for you.
think
I've only
so.
got one story, and I've told it every time on this show, so people are probably sick of it. So I'm right there with you. But what have you read lately in the weird fiction or horror field that you really liked, or what are you reading now?
I don't know what genre this is. I mean, this is
That's okay.
wild. This book, I have it here next to me. The Silk Road, Catherine Davis. It is, well, it's kind of like about transcendence itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this group of people. They're related, like somehow related, like connected, and they're experiencing like a group, like transcendence in a like they're in a yoga studio, but they're like leaving to go to these other places, and it's like guided, but you never really know exactly what's going on. But it doesn't matter, because first of all, the writing itself is just incredible, and it's just, you end up feeling transcended, even though it's not like a linear, it's not like a plot per se.
It sounds very different, and different done right is good.
It's done right.
I'm reading, I read a lot of small press stuff, obviously. I've got a small press myself that's slowed down a little bit the last year or two because I've been so sick, but I do have one. And then I like to read more mainstream if I find something interesting too. And right now I'm reading a book. It's called The Shadows, and it's by Alex North. I'm not sure, but I think that's a pseudonym, so I don't know if I should say his book or her book, but it doesn't really matter. It's just really, I'm glad I'm reading it this time of year, and I just stumbled on it because it was $1.99 on Kindle last week. So now I'm about a quarter of the way through it. It's about a murder that happened 25 years ago, and I'll just read the first paragraph so you get an idea of it. You knew a teenager like Charlie Crabtree. A dark imagination, a sinister smile always on the outside of the group. Some part of you suspected that he might be capable of doing something awful. 25 years ago, Crabtree did just that, committing a murder so shocking that it's attracted that strange kind of infamy that only exists on the darkest corners of the internet and has inspired more than one copycat. And then skipping down, it kind of goes between 25 years ago and now, between the vantage point of a female detective that's on the case now, and the vantage of a guy by the name of Paul Adams. Hi, Henry. Henry just meowed at me. Who was a friend of Charlie Crabtree's and has now come back to this town. It's set in England. And so skipping down, he goes, his mother is distressed, insistent that something's in the house. He's come back because she's close to death and she's her mind's going and so forth. And someone is following him, which reminds him of the most unsettling thing about that awful day 25 years ago. It wasn't just the murder. It was the fact that afterward, Charlie Crabtree was never seen again. So again, it's called The Shadows, a novel. And actually when I picked it up, I thought, okay, this is going to be a dark crime novel. I've read plenty of those and I love them. I don't just read horror. which I imagine none of you do either. But it does seem supernatural, and I love that when I start a book and I think it's going to be one thing and it ends up being supernatural like this, you know. So,
So great when books are
cool.
unexpected, because they're so often so utterly predictable that to be surprised is a great
it's
feeling.
funny that you say that, because one of the blurbs on the book, I can't find it right now quickly, but it's something to the effect of the book was a surprise in the way that a magician can surprise you. A great magician can surprise you without you feeling cheated, you know, something like that. So it's funny that you said that, Jeff. So okay, we got about 45 minutes left. Yeah, the guard Goldsmith on the live chat says, I saw The Shadows on Amazon and it caught my eye. Now I'll get it ASAP. The Shadows is actually the name for the really dark woods surrounding the town. So there's some extra flavor there for you. So
throw a little blurb in for a little plug in rather for this book. I just finished it today. It's from Journalstone. It's by Polly Chattel. Or Chattel. The Occultists, it's called. It's a novel from Journalstone, and it takes place in Edwardian times, and it jumps around from different locations. And this was a wonderful read. I just was really, really impressed with it. Okay. And it just read a little bit about it on Facebook, and the cover struck me, and so I read it, and it was very rewarding. I didn't realize that the author Polly is a filmmaker, and so, but it doesn't surprise me reading it. It's just the structure, the plotting of it is so well constructed, and it's very engaging. The plot really pulled me in, and it's got a whole bunch of really unique, interesting characters, and so this was a great read. I really want to kind of, like I said, just give a little plug for that, because it was
The Occultist, published by Journalstone, by
Polly Chattel.
Looks like Polly, Schattel.
Yeah.
Okay.
So great read.
Awesome.
Wonderfully plotted and really, really pulled me in. And so I would call it mostly like a dark fantasy, but there are some incredibly creepy and horrific things that take place. And somebody, another author, William Holloway, compared it to mid-career Clive Barker. And I could see that. At times there are these epic battles between people with using occult forces and so forth. And it's and it really gets epic in those scenes, and cinematic. Again, Polly is apparently a filmmaker, you know, and so it's just
Well, speaking of film, just real quickly, then I want to get to Scott. Danielle, my wife Danielle, and I are watching. We're on the second to last episode of The Haunting of Bly Manor from Mike Flanagan, and it's really, really good. Very, 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 very quiet horror, which you guys know me. I like that a lot.
And again, it's based on the turn of the screw. Is it?
Yeah. Well,
is it
more or less
loosely or?
Very loosely. Just, you know, he did. Did you watch The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that didn't really have anything to do with Shirley Jackson's Hill House, really. Now I'm gonna have to reread The Turn of the Screw, but I would say it's closer, but yes, very loosely. But whether or not it is probably beside the point, because it's just really well done, and it's that type of quiet horror that I really like. You know, that's perfect for Halloween. I mean, you know, if you like slasher flicks, great. You know, everybody's different, but that's not what I like, and this is just really good. And the other thing I finished last night, which it won't be to everybody's taste, but Blumhouse has, I guess, 4 movies on Amazon Prime. You know, they like Welcome to the Blumhouse. Maybe you've seen those. They're free to watch if you have Prime. And I finished Nocturne last night, late, about twin sisters who are musicians and going to a music school. So it's a slow burn, and it really pays off. And it's almost, guys, Kat, you're gonna love this, but it's almost King and Yellowish in some ways. So I've heard there's also a very good movie, just by accident, named called Nocturne in 2017. This is not what I'm talking about though, because I haven't seen that one yet. So this is on Amazon Prime, and I thought it was really good. If you're looking for, if you go into it, if you watch it, go into it. It's a slow burn. You have to realize that going in. So anyway, Scott, your wife says that yeah, you're on the spot, dude. Some spooky things one or two spooky things have happened in your new house. You've been there a couple years now.
Spooky true stories.
Yes. We've got 40 minutes left. We are now at the spooky true stories edition. I was going to read Nightwire by H.F. Arnold, but it's a great story. It's published in Weird Tales in 1926.
Ooh.
It's in the Weird. It's also online to read for free. But if you don't have a print or Kindle copy of the Vandermeer's The Weird, you should, if you can, pick it up sometime. It's just, and they do it. You guys have probably, I don't know if you guys have read it or not, but they do it in chronological order, and they pick out what they consider to be some of the best weird tales from, I forget what year they start, up to the present publication date of the book. So anyway,
starts with an excerpt from the novel The Other Side by Alfred Kubin, and goes all the way up to, I think the last story is by K.J. Bishop. I just finished it.
Yeah. Really?
A few weeks ago. Finally, I've been chiseling fantastic at it for a number of years, but I finally really just.
This is not a book you consume in a weekend. Yeah.
No,
it's just like the most enjoyable reference book you'll ever read, if you know what I mean, if you're into weird fiction. So
rich with treasures.
So, all right, Scott. I'm sorry I keep coming back to you, but yeah, True Tales. It's True Tales time.
True Tales. So my notion of I'll preface by saying my notion of the supernatural is paradoxical. My logical inclination is when I hear a ghost story, I'm incredibly skeptical, and I know the complexity of the human mind and perception and superstition and so many different
Right.
factors.
Sure.
I'm a great doubter when I hear stories, and in terms of belief, I don't like the word belief in itself. But by the same token, I've had experiences that can't be logically explained, and there's so much we don't know. Who knows what there is in our reality and universe.
Yeah, it sounds like Carl Sagan said we need equal parts wonder and skepticism. We do need evidence, but we also have to realize that we know very little, as you're saying. So
I like it. But so that's my logical self speaking, and even I examine my own experiences, and I'm, it's like I want to be skeptical of them, but I experience them, and I know that when I've had weird things happen, that I was sane and sober. I suppose sane is subjective.
I was going to say,
so I can't.
As your friend, I have to say.
Mike. But these are experiences I had, and some of them with other people, some really dramatic things with multiple witnesses.
Right.
So at any rate, I've talked quite a bit over the years on our traditional show here about a haunted house in Templeton, Mass. that was written up in newspapers for being haunted. We didn't know it when we bought it, and there were other people who had experiences there, and one we spoke with, and he was a very good, trustworthy, sane, brilliant person as a source. But at any rate, I digress. So earlier, I was talking with my wife Sarah about where we are now, and there have been some weird occurrences here, where we live in a little mill village in Rhode Island, in northern Rhode Island, very close to the Blackstone River. Just a few streets over, there's the Blackstone River, which was very important in the early New England mass production and to the what's the term there? The revolution, the industrial revolution.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just like right near the Blackstone River, and it's this little village. It's not even a center of town. It's part of a bigger town, Lincoln, Rhode Island. But at any rate,
Great New England setting that you're in.
It's very charming. We've lived in some pretty unpleasant parts of Rhode Island, and to find this place, it's lovely. There's woods and there's state woods, protected woods nearby, and very close to us a pond and trails, and it's wooded. At any rate, so it's a nice atmosphere, and it has a nice New England town look to it. And there's a vernacular type of building here, because it was a big mill center back in the day, due to the river's proximity. They built these 3-story boxy looking houses at the turn of the century. And so it's just like a big 3-story box with like a missile, a window missile, I'll call them. They're turrets with these tapering peaked roofs like you see in a lot of haunted house art. So we have one of those on the house, this turret. It's built in 1900 and is a ton of period trim and woodwork. There's bullseye molding all over the place. In my little study here, there's like a whole bunch of it around the doorways, and it's got horsehair plaster. So it's got a lot of period feel to it. So at any rate, it seems a fitting setting for some of the experiences we've had, and nothing like as dramatic in movies, but when you experience it, it's, you know, fairly dramatic to you who are
Right.
witnessing it. So one time, me and Sarah were in our bedroom talking, and we heard one of the cats moving under a bureau in the room. There was some boxes. We were still moving. There was a bunch of boxes and stuff in front of this bureau. And we could hear one of the cats scrounging around under the bureau through this massive boxes. And when I looked out of the room, there were all of our cats in the kitchen. And we clearly heard this. We're waiting to see the cat emerge from under the bureau, and it didn't. Another time, we were in that same spot. I'm standing there, and we're talking in the living room. Sarah's sitting down, and we heard this voice right under us in the cellar. And the cellar in this place is just creepy and
I bet that age at home.
It's very atmospheric, filled with webs, and oh my gosh, it's very picturesque in a well, crumbling brick original period.
So what happened?
So we heard this voice right under us, and we thought, you know, is that like one of the neighbors from upstairs, from the 3rd floor, doing laundry down there? But it definitely wasn't, because you can distinctly hear people coming down the stairs from where we are on the 1st floor. If someone's going to the cellar, and you can hear them moving down there. We heard this voice right under us, and it had a strange, and the way Sarah and I described what we heard, we described it the exact same way. So we shared the same experience or witnessed it. The voice had a very sing-songy quality.
If you tell me that it said Zool, if you tell me it said Zool, I'm cutting you off.
Yeah, Zool.
Sorry.
It did say that. Excuse me. We're not sure if she's laughing. We're not sure what it said,
Okay.
but we both tried to articulate that it had a quality to the ear that was unearthly, not like sounds in reality sound. It's hard to explain. And we both tried to explain that, what we heard, it just had an unearthly sound to it. And it was right under us, this voice. And we both heard it, the same
Yeah, I was
thing,
going
and
to say it's
described
very
it the
hard
same way.
to dismiss experiences when two people, more than one person experiences it. It becomes much harder to dismiss.
Yeah.
So.
Another time, she was in our kitchen and she swears she saw a figure, a guy, a male, in there's double parlors, Victorian double parlors, and she saw a figure move like from one side of the parlor toward the front door, and she says it was not peripheral, that she got a pretty good visual sense of a figure. And another one that was really creepy, she was at her, we've been working at home due to the virus, and so we got a little workstation for her in the what we call the front parlor.
Sure.
The parlors are connected by an arch, an open arch way, so we've made a little office area for her. Well, she had a mirror on her desk, a little stand-up mirror, and while the mirror is sitting on her desk, she saw these pale legs moving in the mirror behind her, and she thought maybe it was Bridget, my stepdaughter, but Bridget, it turns out, was asleep, and it was
that's the creepiest one yet.
That's the creepy one. Yes,
really,
it wasn't the cat Piper. Piper's black and white, and Piper came by shortly after, visible in the mirror. So she's vividly black and white, so it wasn't her. So she saw these, what looked to her like pale legs, but it seemed
human pale legs of the sort. Is that what you're saying?
She thought it looked like a person's pale legs, and it was so distinct that her mind took it to be a real person because it seemed so natural. Oh, there's some pale legs. But then she, looked and realized that there was no one there, or no one around who could have, given illusion of motion or shown up in the mirror in any way. Bridget was asleep. I was probably in my study working. I work from home. So that was the real creepiest thing. I know I'm forgetting something. I know there's been more than that here, but that's just some of the weird stuff here where we are.
This is kind of some of the essence of Scott Nickley, for one, and Anya could probably articulate this far better than I can, but some of the essence, for me at least, of weird fiction and of quiet horror and so forth is this experience happened, whatever it was, and I have no explanation for it. All I can tell you is this is what happened. And I heard you on a podcast interview recently, Scott, like maybe 6 months ago, and you said one of your mantras is in writing is explain nothing. So which I really
like. Quote
like.
From Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So new experiences to add. So Kat wants to know about, did the cats notice anything in the first story? Did they react in any way?
I remember one night the cats in the bedroom, and we wondered what they were looking at. One cat was looking around the room very fast. And cats, they see stuff or little bugs or something. But I'd have to ask Sarah if it was the same night that one of these weird occurrences happened. I don't remember in particular, but we have noticed cats acting, like they're fascinated by something we can't see. But, cat Sarah is a cat person yourself.
Yes. Yeah. There's a few of them roaming around here. One just jumped on the back of my chair. I'm like, what the? Oh, hi, Charlie. I really don't. I appreciate you being on the show so much, and I don't want to leave you out. Anything that you want to relate, or are you just content listening?
I'm just listening, and I don't remember any like unexplained experiences. I feel like our life has been kind of like a horror show. So much in these past months that
Yeah,
it's like,
I think we lost Ina.
Oh no.
So I'm sure she'll jump back on. Talking about 2020 life, and then she gets cut
Yeah,
off.
that's
Very apropos.
illustrated right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Holy moly.
I've been on before and talked about experiences before, and
Yeah,
I think it's significant that the place I'm living now, I've been living here almost 7 years, I've had no experiences. So I think that makes more valid the experiences I've had in other places, because it shows that it's not me. It's not like I'm just superimposing. I'm just not interpreting things.
yeah, that's a good point.
If you've experienced it in one place, but then you're somewhere else and you don't experience it, I think that shows that I'm not just misinterpreting everything that I see.
That's a good
The
point.
only thing that I experienced in the past few years was maybe like about within the past 2 years. On one of my trips to Vietnam, I've been to Vietnam 12 times, and I was staying at this hotel. I was staying in this room alone in a city called Dalat, and
Called
there
the
was a little
what?
chest. The name of the city is Dalat, Vietnam. It's up
Okay,
in
yeah,
in
I've
the
heard
mountains.
this story. King wrote this, didn't he? Was it Jerusalem's lot?
No, it's Dalat. It's Dalat.
Oh, okay. There's my
And,
hearing again. My bad hearing again. Okay, yeah.
It's a beautiful area, mountainous, and
With
I was
no
staying
vampires, we assume.
no, but maybe it was a vampire, but I was alone in this room, at this little dingy kind of hotel room, and there was a chest of drawers near the bed, and the top drawer was shaking, very distinctly shaking, like rattling, like somebody was trying to open it. And it startled me, and I thought, well, there's got to be a mouse or a rat in the drawer, and it really unnerved me. And I finally got up the courage to open the drawer, and there's nothing in it. The only thing, if it didn't have a supernatural explanation, the only thing I can imagine is there was a rat in the chest of drawers behind the drawer, trying to push the back of the drawer. That maybe that could be what was happening, but the whole chest wasn't shaking. The other drawers weren't shaking. It was just the top drawer rattling, like somebody was trying to open it and it was locked or something. But of course it wasn't locked. But it was like banging.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like vibrating, like maybe there's something, a machine running somewhere or something that's making it vibrate. No, this one drawer was kind of like banging, and so it was really uncanny. But that's the only thing I've experienced in the past couple of years.
And Ina's back. Hey, Ina.
Hey.
Your internet
that
kicked you off?
must have been a ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
First experience.
Did you guys see Host, I think was the name of it? My brain's really tired tonight. On Shudder a while back. It really made a big splash. They just made this.
Oh, you interviewed them.
Yeah, I
right?
did. Yeah. So the premise of the movie, guys, it's on Shudder. The premise of the movie is that friends are going to do a seance or whatever via Zoom. It's basically a 2020 pandemic story. So the whole movie, it's all Zoom. And it's creepy as hell, and it's very impressive because each actress had to do her own special effects and everything, and it was kind of surreal. Then I interviewed the ladies that starred in it and the director on Zoom, like a few days after it came out.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So,
And what was interesting about that interview, and I didn't see, I only saw the interview, I didn't see it, the movie, but they had so much synergy together on that Zoom.
Yeah.
And that's how they developed their teamwork.
Yeah, it really is
Zoom.
amazing to see in the movie. So anyway, look, guys, Dave on the live chat says, if we have time for this, since Jeffrey and Scott are here, I cannot go Halloween without a cottage street story. Can you please tell the one about the books being thrown at you by an entity? So a special request for you.
Somebody has a good memory.
How does Dave remember that? Holy moly!
You can't even remember it.
Even the street name. Scott can tell that story.
Yeah, I didn't remember the street name either.
We lived, it was in our hometown of Westboro, Mass, and we were living in a house. It was a duplex, really, but there was also a little, like, a third little apartment. At any rate, we lived in half of this house, and my mother had told us that it was during the Civil War a recruiting station, which is interesting because there's something of a Civil War theme. There were a few times when I remember imagining these Civil War figures looking in the windows of the second floor, but this wasn't like me literally seeing ghosts. It was me kind of imagining it, and I remember it was kind of creepy upstairs, and maybe with good reason.
Okay, hang on. How old were you? How old was Jeff? And Dave even remembers that it was 15 Cottage Street.
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
Wow!
I know, right?
Yes, that's true.
All right,
so
it
was.
No, it was 9 Cottage Street.
Oh, it was.
We lived on two haunted houses on Cottage Street. That was Cottage Street. 15 was the other haunted house on Cottage
Street.
Street.
But still,
all right. But at any rate, how old were you with the experience you're about to relate, Scott? How old were you? And then we can just add 20 years for Jeff. He's
gosh, was it early 70s? So I was like maybe 9 or 10 or so, or
okay. And you're what, a couple years older? All kidding aside, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm 2 years older.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to know that reference.
Good reference, yeah. Good point. So at any rate, I was sort of creeped out, and I would imagine these like Civil War figures looking in with blurred faces, no faces, kind of skin-colored faces, looking in second floor windows. And I think because I was kind of like frightened, I wanted somebody to come up stairs because I was afraid to move, and maybe Jeffrey, come up. I'm seeing these ghosts or something. But so it's kind of like my imagination. But it was interesting that Civil War figures. This is years before I learned it was a recruiting station during the Civil War. And another time, at the bottom of the stairs, there was a window in the front door, and I don't know if this is an impression. It's not something I don't think I literally 100% saw, but I had this like impression of a Southern uniform with a little cap, sort of tilted, looking in sideways right at the window, and again a face that was just a skin-colored blur with the uniform. And again, this isn't something I clearly visually saw.
Yeah, but you know what? This is very Summer of Night. There's a lot of paranormal things happening in that novel, but something like this is one of them, if you guys remember. Summer of Night by Dan Simmons.
Dan Simmons, I read that,
yeah. I'm sorry, Scott. Please go on.
Well, and keeping the theme of the Civil War, Jeffrey, do you remember our sister Wendy? There was our upstairs room and a little landing and the stairs, and then my sister Wendy's room across the way. And we came up with this like idea that a Civil War ghost had been in Wendy's room, and so every time we would. For a while, when we would go into Wendy's room, we would have to sing, "I'm glad I'm not in Dixie," because it was a northern ghost. So we would have to do that. Do you remember that?
Yes, now that you mention it, yeah.
Yeah. Jeff's like, why'd you have to remember that, Scott? On air.
Sorry. So anyway, there's our bedroom, and we had this bookcase our granddad had made, and it was painted like flesh color. It was like flesh-colored paint, this bookcase. And there was, it had books in it. And there was this one book that kind of scared us. It was this yellow book without a slip cover. I think my younger brother Craig has borrowed it right now. I can show it to you, but it was supposedly about true hauntings. Well, I'm up there alone, and some books just fell out of this bookcase, and that book was one of the books. And we were kind of kids, you know, your impressions are so potent.
Yeah.
And so this book was almost like a mystical thing to us, like, oh, you know, frightening, and imbued with mystery. Excuse me. So I'm freaked out. These books fall down. And so again, I'm scared, too scared to like go down the stairs. I'll leave the room on my own.
Okay, I'm sorry. What time of the day was this, and where was
this? Was
Jeff?
during daytime. This
Okay,
was
where
daytime.
was Jeff?
So I took some of the books and I frisbeed them out onto the little landing where the stairs were, and I called to Jeffrey and said that something had thrown books out onto, you know, some ghost was throwing books. So Jeffrey's coming up the stairs. Oh, my phone's trying to die here.
That's okay. We can still hear
there
you.
There we go. So I go out onto the landing. Jeffrey comes up the stairs, and books come. We both saw this. Books came flying out of the room behind me onto the landing. If that is how I remember it, Jeffrey.
Like somebody was.
I've heard this story before, but it's so great.
And the funny thing is that he started doing it like to trick me or whatever, and then it happened on its own. Apparently, it was
Wow.
which leads me to think that maybe it was like they say poltergeist activity is actually because of some the energy of some troubled adolescent or
Right.
something. And I
Right.
think Scott's own energy was. If it's
pointing
as
at
we
himself.
remember it, I think Scott's own poltergeist energy was
Psychokinetic. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you pop out suddenly, Scott, it's cool. We'll know it's your phone dying and not Ina's ghost. So,
But you know, these things are so. Sometimes these stories are so that you experience when you're young. I question myself over and over about, did I really witness it that way, or is it just the way I remember it? But
sure.
you know, I can't just totally discount some of these weird things that happened to us when we were kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, you guys were so into Halloween and everything, and I would have loved to grown up in your household, or maybe not. Did he pick on you a lot, Scott?
No.
He was a good big brother.
We never had that kind of dynamic.
We almost formed a third mind between us. We were so close and creatively bouncing off each other and sharing our interests.
That's great. That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you know, YouTube these days and seems to go temporarily, at least, nuts on me if I go past the 2-hour mark. So we won't do that. But I think we should pick on the new person. And do you guys see? They agree with me, you know. And
Sure.
I have a question about a doll incident that recently.
I noticed you put her up
Yeah.
on the preview.
Yeah, if I posted her picture on the Lovecraft eZine website. I blog posted about the show, and beneath that I wrote, "You might get an explanation for this image tonight, or you might not." And I thought,
Sure.
that's a very generic Halloween 2020 thing I've got on YouTube. Let's just put up Ina's scary doll, and you know, without explanation. So that's what I did.
So a week or two ago, it was my daughter's birthday. And before we went out things aren't very celebratory these days, but we grabbed an outdoor bite at an outdoor mall. And before that, I had decided to make one last ditch effort to speak to my family, to my parents. and try to get them to stop watching Fox News. And because of our living situation, everyone can hear what everybody says. And so when I was on the phone with my dad, we're from Ukraine, and we sometimes have a hard time like understanding each other, but emotions were high, and I was trying so hard to explain to him, and all my family could hear me say over and over again is, Dad, there is no organized group called Antifa. And I repeated it, and I got off the phone. I was frustrated.
Because you're in, they can hear you because you told me you live kind of in a loft.
Yeah, we live in
Right.
There's no like privacy of sound.
Right.
Where we live, and so we went out. We had 2 cars. I came home with our boys, put them to bed. I didn't understand why my daughter and husband were taking so long to get home. I went into the bathroom, and when I came out, all the lights were out, and it was so dark. I walked towards my bedroom. I didn't see or hear anyone, and there was this like tall, lit up blue like ghoul. And I gasped, and all of a sudden I heard in the dark I heard my daughter and husband giggling on the couch, and they turned on the sound. She has this crazy laugh, and they said, "She's for you. Her name is Antifa."
Antifa.
Oh.
So did they really startle you a lot?
They startled me a lot because first of all, I didn't know they were there.
Right.
And second of all, this is like a tall, like a mannequin, lit up blue.
Yeah, you said.
I thought
didn't you tell me it's taller than you?
Yeah, taller than me, and it was dark, so all I could see is like this blue, and you could see like the right. Hollow of the eyes.
When I saw it, I was like, I told you, it's such a mesmerizing image.
Yeah.
I went to YouTube earlier to get ready for the show, and I clicked on it, and that image was on the screen.
Yeah,
that was all
exactly.
it was, and it startled me. Just seeing it on the screen startled me. Let alone how you must have felt walking into that bedroom and seeing.
Dang.
But it it made light of a tough situation.
Yeah.
So I appreciated it, and now she's our like mascot, Antifa.
So if you want to see this really cool picture of this doll in the dark and with like lit up from within or something, just go to the Lovecraft eZine website, lovecraftezine.com or lovecraftzine.com. They both work. eZine. And the very first, if you're watching this somewhere in the year 2020, it's probably going to stay this way. It's the very first, for a while, it's the very first sticky blog post, which means it's the splash thing. So click on that. I think that's a picture of Michael Keaton and Beetlejuice. But it'll take you to the post about tonight's show. And then I link to this video here, of course, and talk about you guys. A link to you guys, all 3 of you, and then 2 images below, pictures of you guys, and then the doll beneath that. So if you want to see the doll, go to Lovecraft eZine's website.
Cool.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I'll try to remember after I log out of the show here to put it on the Lovecraft eZine Facebook message board.
I told my family that was the like YouTube preview.
What'd they say?
They got a kick out of that.
Hey. So this is funny. Brandon on the live show goes, it was, he wrote this when we were talking about you being in a loft and no audio privacy.
Mhm.
He goes, with, in my mind, in a loft, but he goes, everyone can hear you scream. You know, unlike Alien in space, no one can hear you scream. So anyway, yeah. Anything else, guys, before we wrap up? Yeah, I have linked in the blog post and on the YouTube notes, and will later for the audio podcast do the same thing. Links to you guys. Scott, I linked to the Sea of Ash for you, which is currently 99 cents. Probably till the end of October, and then it'll go back up. I'm talking about the Kindle version, of course.
Yes.
There's a print version also, and a hell of a great audio edition. So read by Lehman Kessler.
Oh gosh.
I can't believe the performance he gave for that.
Yeah. Remarkable.
I can't even. It's hard to say this because you know what a fan I am of the Sea of Ash, but it doesn't add to the story. It adds another dimension to the story. Do you know what I mean? So, anyway, you can consume that story in one of those three ways if you want. But and I linked to your latest collection, which was, I'm blanking here, Jeff.
Oh, the Unnamed Country.
Yes, I linked to that. But please, everybody, remember to pre-order The American at Journalstone's website. Just Google Journalstone, Jeffrey Thomas, The American. I'm sure it'll take you right to it. So, or if you're listening to this, a month or whatever from now, I'm sure it's going to be on Amazon and all that too. And then Ina is a great writer. She's got some work out there. I'm sure at some point she'll have a collection, and I'll be happy to, when that happens, to help promote it, because I really am a fan of your writing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, but I linked to your Twitter account. So
great.
So follow Ina on Twitter. The Thomas brothers are not on Twitter, but they are on Facebook. And
I deleted my Twitter a couple weeks ago. I just got disgusted with the talk.
Yeah, I saw you said that online. So anyway, happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you to everybody who's watching us live. Thank you to everyone watching us later too, and or listening to the audio version later. If you are, I hope you're in your car driving in a 2-lane at night, like at 2 a.m, and we scared you out of your mind. So, and I hope that you don't run out of gas on this deserted 2-lane.
Yeah. Don't drive back. If you see any cars driving backwards, stay away from them.
That's right. Yeah. And what else was I going to say? Oh, thank you so much to the patrons who are literally keeping my bills paid. This is what I do, and my wife's a school teacher, and you know that the millions that school teachers make. So, so as usual, thanks to Scott and Jeff for the readings and for the stories. And
pleasure.
This is the second time I've more or less met you in person, or as much as we do in 2020, and it's really great to hear you read and to read your work. So I'm glad you came with us.
To all three of you and to everyone who tuned in. I really appreciate this chance to, well, most of all, just to be with other writers and, among civilization.
Well, thank you for being here. And since I did link to your Twitter, Ina, if you feel like it, tonight or tomorrow or whatever, you sent me a list of your stories that are out there published. Those of you who are interested in reading, you've enjoyed Ina's story tonight, want to read more of her work, then maybe you could tweet it and then go buy those. So here's one, Spirits Unwrapped. So edited by Daniel Braun. So happy Halloween, everybody. Thanks, guys, for being here. And
thank you.
we'll see everybody for the regular show this coming Sunday with John Horner Jacobs. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.